Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Major update on this ongoing Red Bull saga with Helmut Marko officially leaving the team. There were major questions as to whether Max Verstappen's race engineer Gianpiero Lambiase could be out of the door as well. Red Bull respond and say no, he will be staying, but in exactly what capacity? Some rumours suggesting he will be gone as Verstappen's engineer and will remain home in Milton Keynes for personal reasons. Others suggest that is not the case at all and nothing is changing. Clearly something is going on behind the scenes at Red Bull Racing. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Apologies for the later video than normal today. I had a long travel day getting out here to Poland. I'm competing in a swimming championships in the next couple of days, so hopefully that goes well. But anyway, I will be keeping you guys updated on Formula 1. As always, the timings just might be slightly different, but there has been a lot happening and we're going to start here. This is Colton Herta in a Formula 2 car doing the test, as we know happens post Abu Dhabi. They have the young driver stuff going on. Not like Herta's especially young, but they have the tyre test, the mule cars, and then some of the other guys get out there as well. Now, this is Herta in an F2 car. Incredibly unfortunate timing in many ways, because today the FIA officially confirms they are changing the super license points that you get allocated for racing in IndyCar. I don't follow IndyCar massively closely. I mean, I do watch the races from time to time. Obviously watch the 500 every year and have a reasonable idea what's going on, but it's clear to anyone who's watched IndyCar, it's a quality series with quality drivers and, well, many quality Formula 1 drivers who did decent things in F1 have gone to IndyCar and not exactly set the world on fire. Romain Grosjean, among others, being examples. Marcus Ericsson is a 500 champion, all that stuff. Mick Schumacher's in IndyCar next year. It's going to be very exciting. The bottom line is that is a very competitive championship with top quality drivers, and I think the feeling of many has been it deserves more respect in regards to the FIA. The FIA do not give many points to IndyCar drivers. That, however, is changing. So first and second still get 40, 30 respectively. I think you need like 40 total in order to race in F1 and get your proper super license. Now you can accrue those in multiple different ways, as we know. But the rules have now changed. So if you're third, you used to get just 20 points. Now that'll be 25. But for some of the lower positions, it's increased particularly drastically. Fourth has gone from 10 to 20. Fifth has gone for 8th up to 15. Some of them have doubled. Some of them just under doubled. But, you know, I think the FIA finally giving, frankly, the respect to IndyCar drivers that they deserve. Of course, it's not an FIA championship, which is why this happens fundamentally. The FIA don't run the show over there, so they consider it to be slightly lesser than some of the other championships that are under their domain. But the reality is, because of that, Herta was never able to get his Formula 1 drive that nearly happened because Red Bull and Helmut Marko were very interested in a seat at AlphaTauri a couple of years back. That didn't happen. They got Nick de Vries instead. The rest, as we know, is history. But now Herta does want to get into Formula 1. He is going to be Cadillac's reserve driver with the intention to get a Formula 1 drive at some point in the future and be their American representative. Now, if he continued in IndyCar, getting the appropriate points for his super license to move over would not have happened. It would have been a big challenge. Now, with the changes they've made, that actually might have been more feasible. But does it mean that he's necessarily made a bad decision? No. He's going to Formula 2, which is, yeah, it's a big surprise. It's a big risk in many ways. He's a very established driver. To drive F2 next season is going to be real interesting. We know that F2 is a complicated and controversial championship. Is it really a spec series? Are the engines really the same? All this type of stuff. But I think for Herta, this could still be an advantage. He gets to drive on the Formula 1 tracks with the Pirelli compound of tyre, which they don't use in IndyCar. So I think regardless of maybe he could have stayed in IndyCar and still got the super license based on the changes, it's probably still, given his ambitions to be a Formula 1 driver for Cadillac in the next few years, probably a good thing regardless. Now, lots going on over the last few days. Max was officially the first driver ever to hold the number one for the entirety of a set of aero regulations, but I mean, we knew that 12 months ago, right? Obviously, he lost it technically at the final race. We'll get back to Max in a second. This is the Ferrari steering wheel comparison. We've talked about this a little bit over the last few days. Effectively, Hamilton told the team, as far as we understand, lads, this steering wheel is pretty challenging to use compared to some of the others. It's prone to errors and it's not really ideal. Now look, Charles Leclerc has been there a long time, presumably he's pretty used to it, but also Hamilton does know a thing or two about building more appropriate steering wheels. And look, even if Charles Leclerc can still nail all the transitions and all the stuff that they're trying to do on the wheel because he's used to it, it doesn't mean that if it's as easy as it could be, that's still an advantage to both drivers. It takes less time to change the diff or whatever. Now, these are the changes they're making, at least visually, as far as we understand. It looks a little different, first of all, as well. The way the paddles are sitting on there and the way the hands sit. But there's also just fewer dials in general, right? All those massive amount of dials at the bottom of the screen. There's some of them, but they're somewhat diminished. The screen feels a little bit bigger in relation to the wheel. So, look, it's still a complicated piece of technology that probably sets you back 100 grand a pop. I don't know, it might be more than that. But there are some changes. And the rumour anyway is that Hamilton gave his thoughts on this, they listened to Hamilton, and now they're making some changes as a result. So I think at least Lewis can be pretty happy about that. But at least they're listening to him on something, right? And hopefully for his sake, maybe they listen to him on other things, because it seems that, well, he needs them to, and maybe the team needs to listen to him as well, given what Ferrari have been up to this most recent season. Some other images I thought that were very nicely put together here by Andrea. So that's that. The other big development from Ferrari is what next. We know that next year's car, the 678, we don't know what it's going to be called officially yet, but that's Project 678. It's a hugely important car. It's probably Ferrari's most important car at this point in a rather long time. You could argue 2022, but even then, they delivered a good car in 2022. It fell short for various reasons. Probably wasn't quite sound enough from a, let's say, suspension design standpoint. Yeah, there was the technical directive that season, but once Red Bull got their car down to the weight limit, they were always really faster with the concept they had. But they started well, as we know, in 2022. 2023, they had a great qualifying car. 2024, they had a great race car. 2025, they had none of the above, right? So next year is incredibly important. They've still not won a championship in 20-odd years. Vasseurs now been at the helm for some time. This is Loic Serra's first car in the team. Loads of important things. Now, look, Hamilton, Ferrari will be his last team. I'd be shocked if he goes anywhere else afterwards. I think for a couple of reasons. Firstly, why would Hamilton leave a project and go somewhere else? Surely he's got to try to make it work. Presumably, Ferrari will try to make it work with him as well. But, who knows what happens. Obviously, his performance this season was far from great. But, at times it's not like he was that far off Charles Leclerc. And this is a Charles Leclerc in his prime at a team that he's known for a long time. And a Charles Leclerc who also had a very challenging season by his own admission. They never won a race apart from the sprint that China won, or the Hamilton won back in China. And both of them, certainly Charles Leclerc, could be out the door. So for Hamilton, understandably, there's not going to be an awful lot of interest in him on the market right now, given the expectations. But for Leclerc, I mean, absolutely, there are teams that are interested. Because, there's not many teams out there that need a driver like Hamilton. Whereas there certainly are teams out there that are, let's say, an Aston Martin. They're going to lose Fernando Alonso in the next couple of years. They're not going to replace Alonso with Hamilton because it's kind of the same thing, right? You put in a 44-year-old for a 41-year-old and you run into the same issue in the next year or so. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, is a very different story. So there are multiple teams interested in getting Charles Leclerc. Aston clearly one. Mercedes, of course. Red Bull will be thinking about it as well, depending on what happens in their stable over the next few years. The Mercedes thing, of course, is far from a guarantee, but there's been some talking points about it, that at least there's some intrigue there. Of course, the main intrigue would be for Max. One does have to wonder next season whether the Ricciardo Adami-Lewis Hamilton partnership will also be broken apart, because, well, race fans put together the entire transcript of their radio discussions during the Grand Prix. And there was some regular standard stuff, right? But even on lap 19, Adami was told Hülkenberg car behind, racing him, 0.9, same strategy. And Hamilton's like, look, I know that I'm racing the guy, right? I'm here to try and win this race, or at least make him as many positions. Obviously, I'm racing these guys. Adami kept saying it later on. There were a few things that frustrated Hamilton during this race, and I think it kind of just summed up where their relationship seems to be. It never really felt like things got going between those two, and it would be a big surprise, I think, if Hamilton and Adami are a pairing again next season. Surely they're going to make a change in that regard. And even at the end of the race, when Hamilton said, thanks for your kindness, grateful for your hard work, I'll fight for you guys always, and then there was no response. And Adami says, yep, we were talking. So, sorry, Lewis, weren't talking to you. We were talking about, I don't know, whatever. We came P8 in the race at the end of the day. But let's talk about the drama at Red Bull Racing. Yuki Tsunoda responds to Helmut Marko leaving the team. All the drama about how Marko left and why and all that stuff. We discussed it yesterday. But Yuki put this out there. Thanks, Helmut, for bringing me into the Red Bull family, helping me in my Formula 1 career. Yuki will stay as part of Red Bull. Helmut Marko, as we know, will not. Also rumours as to what Max Verstappen's number is going to be next season. It's no longer 1, that's being taken by Lando Norris, and he has confirmed that indeed will replace the number 4. So you'd think Max would go back to 33. He has joked about using the number 69, but I doubt that he would actually do that. So Dr. Obbs, who he has some connections at Red Bull, that is very clear. He wants to use the number 3, does Max. Max has actually said this and made it pretty clear. But Daniel Ricciardo still has that number because it gets reserved for another year, effectively, after the guy leaves the sport. So, and Ricciardo only left towards the end of last season, so technically the number 3 is not available, I don't think, yet for Max. But presumably, with the permission of Danny Rick, with the permission of the FIA and Formula 1, this could be done. They could find a way to make it happen. Max used the number 3 in his karting days, and he's always kind of associated with that number. He became 33 because that was the only alternative when he came onto the grid. But I think he's always wanted to use the number 3, really. It is interesting, though, because it is a big departure for the Verstappen brand, if you want to look at it that way. MV33, Verstappen 33, like it's all part of the same thing. You know, people have tattoos with Verstappen 33 on their back and stuff that I've seen in the past. So it's going to be a departure for sure. It's more opportunity to sell new merchandise, I'm sure Verstappen is thinking about as well. But that is the rumour. Now, like, this has been talked about for some time. Dr. Obbs was, well, he says it like it's a fact, right? And people were like, well, you know, where's your source, right? Like, are you sure about this? How can we believe you? But he definitely knows people at Red Bull, and in the replies, he was denying that he's just made this up, right? He said, look, I wouldn't joke about this. He says, is it confirmed? And the guy, you know, he puts the thumbs up in. So presumably this is actually happening. We may get it confirmed in the coming days. But the big drama on the Max Verstappen side has been about Gianpiero Lambiase, right? So at the end of the Grand Prix, we saw him head in hands, in tears, and it was clear that it was a very emotional moment for GP. What a pairing these guys have been in Formula 1, not just from an execution perspective, but certainly from an entertainment perspective as well. They fit each other, you know, hand to glove, right? And GP's been there the whole time. Even GP's comments after the race where he said, because Max gave a bit of a speech to the team about how hard they'd fought and how proud they could still be of themselves, and GP said something like, wow, how that boy has grown, right? So it feels like a fantastic relationship. We know that that is true, but it feels like one of those relationships which should never ends. But the big rumour why he was so emotional after the Grand Prix was that we know that GP's been going through some personal things. We don't know what these are. Of course, you know, you feel free to speculate if you wish, but we're not going to discuss that in any more detail. All we know is that GP missed a couple of Grand Prix because of personal circumstances. We think he was set to miss Qatar as well, but just because Max was making the comeback, he decided to put that to one side and come regardless. But you could argue 24 races a season, whatever's happening back at home for GP, that's a lot. Like, that's an awful lot of commitment. And it may be something that for 2026, especially if the theory is that Red Bull might not be that competitive, would GP be better suited in a different role? Now, of course, they wouldn't demote him. He would get effectively promoted to another role back at the factory. But Red Bull have confirmed that he's not going to leave, right? So that's the first thing to note. There have been lots of departures. I don't really think this was ever a key rumour. I mean, I don't really think anyone was ever saying that he was going to leave Red Bull. The discussion was more, will he be Verstappen's race engineer, right? So Red Bull have said that he will stay, right? He's definitely staying at Red Bull. He's not leaving the team. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's staying as Verstappen's race engineer. Now, there was this article that came out that said, Lambiase has informed Red Bull he does not wish to travel to races in 2026 due to these personal circumstances. He'll remain at Red Bull, but will be promoted into effectively a more senior role, but will work from the factory in Milton Keynes rather than coming to the Grand Prix. Now, that was a rumour. There was then another article that came out and said, that's cap. Don't know what you're talking about there. I think Racing News 365 reported on both of these things, which is kind of funny. But then you get some reporting that says, no, that's false. He's not going to stop being Verstappen's race engineer. He's still going to come to all the Grand Prix. So you get two conflicting reports on this one. Red Bull say that he is set to stay. And Red Bull, that's what we know from their side. Some rumours that he will stay as Max's race engineer, some rumours that he won't. It's just a very interesting time, right? You look at this picture, okay, GP isn't in this picture, but Sergio Perez, gone. All of the other drivers, frankly, gone. Jonathan Wheatley on the left-hand side, gone. Christian Horner, Adrian Newey, Helmut Marko, they're all out the door in the near future as well. Other key names, Rob Marshall over the last couple of years, Will Courtenay over the last year or so, those guys also out the picture as well. So yeah, that Rebel era is very much over at this point. GP is one of the absolute key figures of that era as well, and it looks like he will stay, but he may not stay in precisely the same capacity. And it's very interesting for Max, right? Like, if it does get to the point where GP sacrificed a lot this season to give what he could to Max's charge at the end of the year, and if GP feels like he's simply not in the position to do that again, look, Max will have a new race engineer if necessary, and I'm sure that they will be fine. But it won't be the same, and it will also be one less, let's say, pull factor to stay at Red Bull. We understand, of course, if the Red Bull car this next year isn't very good, if the Red Bull powertrain's Ford engine isn't delivering as the Mercedes is, Max will be looking at the exit door. We know there will be performance clauses in play. And if all of these guys in the picture are gone, who built this thing in many respects, and GP isn't there either, and it's not just these guys, like Verstappen's top engineer, like his top mechanic, he's leaving to go to another team. There's other changes in Max's backyard, effectively. So, look, it's not like all of these things individually have an enormous impact, but when you add them all up and you put them all together, you start to realize that Max probably doesn't feel like this is quite the same team that he joins and quite the same team that they won all the world championships with. Now, GP will still be there in some capacity, and he may still be the race engineer. But even if he is, right, it's still not quite the same. And if he's not, then things are very different. So Toto Wolff could be licking his lips at the prospect of this, but enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Just one final thing I wanted to mention for you all, because I just, like, every time I see this, it cracks me up, and I just have to comment on it. So you guys may have seen this quote before. The Zak Brown quote, Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton, we have now entered the Lando Norris era, right? Now, this is the original tweet of that quote. Now, this quote is not real, right? Like, this is something that Zak Brown never said, but I will say it's such a good fake quote because it's just borderline believable enough that people have run with it. But I just wanted to clarify that if you think Zak Brown said this on the Lando Norris era, he never did, right? And look, maybe he's going to be right and Norris is going to win the next few titles. Doubtful for sure, but I just wanted to clarify because, you know, I've seen this talked about a lot, right? I see a lot of people all the time referencing this comment from Zak Brown, which never happened. And this, as I say, was the original tweet back in March this year, to such an extent that F1's own video celebrating Lando's championship, they mention in this, like, oh, as Zak Brown said, the Lando era. And I'm like, oh my God, you can't be serious, right? This is coming from Motorsport Bollocks quotes, right? So yeah, just had to mention it to get that out there because I find it hilarious, but equally I find it somewhat concerning how good a piece of misinformation that has become. But very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.